Gomani di Ivacharja August Falchico Sportsline, Scariff Bay Community Radio. This is Pat McMahon here presenting the programme today. Leah was unavoidably absent, and today we're talking hurling and camogie mostly, and we will be joined later on by Tomas Kelly, the co-manager of the St. Joseph's Tulla primary school team in the All-Ireland semi-final this weekend against St. Kieran's of Kilkenny, and also by regular contributor Paraic McMahon of the Clare Echo, who will discuss all matters hurling and camogie with regard to Clare. And now we're delighted to welcome on Sportsline Tomas Kelly, who is joint manager or co-manager, I'm not sure what the term is, of Tulla, St. Joseph's and Tulla's post-primary team as they enter for the first time the All-Ireland Colleges semi-final this weekend. Tomas, thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks very much, Pat, and thanks for having me on.
No other at all, and it's great to have you again, and I'm sure you're busy. Before we talk about the semi-final, Tomas, it was only right and proper that the school and the whole community there would celebrate history being made in terms of the Harty Cup and, show it to all the appropriate people and bring it to all the appropriate places. So I'm sure you did that the week afterwards. You might just reflect back on that before we talk about the big one this weekend.
Yeah, I suppose it would have been it was a huge emotional outpouring after the game. The competition holds such prestige and it holds such an aura for people, especially I suppose people in a certain vintage, and that the cup did do the rounds, and there was a lot of to and fro and visits to the school and different things going on. So look, that's all part and parcel of it. And if you don't celebrate when you win the big ones, you'll never celebrate. So yeah, we'd like to think we did that anyway.
Well, that's brilliant, Josh. We saw bits of it online in various places, and you had some fairly colourful visitors as well, which was nice to see, and just kind of celebrate the whole thing. I'm sure the lads enjoy that as well, because there's a lot of tension and a lot of hard work in the build up to a game. So it was great to have the time to be able to do that from the players' point of view.
Yeah, it was. I suppose they didn't really have a whole pile of time to celebrate themselves because they were straight back into mocks.
That's
true. Maybe Tuesday after. So it was actually good in a way for them to have the focus of the mocks, and it was good for the school because things might have been a bit of a free for all otherwise. So yeah, it was good for them to have the focus of the books and the mocks, and it was brilliant. And we had a brilliant day with Marty Morrissey. He came and visited us on the Friday, and I couldn't speak highly enough of him. How he spoke to the lads and how he made time for everyone. Just a fantastic, impressive character. So we just like to thank him also.
Absolutely. Marty is outstanding, really. And sometimes we forget the lads are in school for another reason besides hurling, I suppose. All right, so those mocks are a great way of getting down to earth. And anyway, on to further matters now, which hopefully might lead to other celebrations. But I know the big step this weekend is St. Kieran's, and I suppose if you're looking for a team or a school to play in an All-Ireland semi-final in your first time, and you want to go towards the top, well, they don't come much higher than St. Kieran's in terms of reputation and achievement so far in colleges hurling, Tomas.
Yeah, I suppose, Pat, they're the standard bearers when it comes to themselves, and St. Flannery's be the standard bearers when it comes to the Crow Cup. The All-Ireland version of the post-primary schools A competition. So for us to be lining out against St. Kieran's is in an All-Ireland semi-final is the stuff of dreams. But we're not going there to make up the numbers, and we're going to give it one right rattle on Saturday. Yeah,
and I suppose you have to combine a respect for who they are and all that with also ensuring, as you say, that your lads don't too much respect them, show too much respect in a sense, and just go out there if it's any other team they're playing. I mean, they have great self-belief as we already have seen, but you got to balance the two things. A great school you're playing, but I suppose for the lads it's just another game that's there to be won on their way to potential glory.
Yeah, I wouldn't really have any fear of them in that regard. They'd be overawed by the opposition, St. Kieran's and their pedigree and what the history of hurling, but we faced a lot of big names so far, and I suppose aside from the St. Coleman's game where we were playing a little bit in awe of our opposition for one half, we've been able to stand up against the big names of Munster. So yeah, it's another big name, but it's 15 against 15 at the end of the day.
Exactly. Now, just in terms of preparation, I'm always fascinated when teams get, further on in competitions and various times of the year, and it gets to the, all the hard work in terms of fitness would have been done. So, would your training now consist mainly of skills and just honing your tactics and positional play and all that kind of thing, or is there still some fitness work to be done? Knowing that conditions can still be tough enough at this time of the year.
No, I suppose we had a 4-week layoff since the final, so we had, I suppose, a little gap for, I suppose, if you like to call it, a little mini pre-season where we could do a little bit of the tougher stuff with the lads, and then we've had a good few obstacles to overcome with different illnesses, injuries. The weather hasn't been to our preference, trying to organise a challenge game or two, so we've had a few little obstacles like that to overcome, but. Yeah, it's like anything, I suppose. Things are never going to go in a straight line for you, and things are never going to go straight forward. But I know we're happy enough with how the preparations have gone in the last few weeks.
And would you train mainly in the school pitch, or do you go down to the Dr. Daly Park, or have you actually gone elsewhere ever for a bit of a training session? It's
a combination of both school field. We would have trained in the school field over the midterm break when the weather wasn't very kind, and the Tulla GA club are very good to us. We train up. We generally train after school with the light dimming in January and February from 4:30 to 6. So yeah, we're really indebted to Tulla GA Club with the use of their lights, and so I suppose it's a combination of we're very lucky with our new school and our new school field that it's literally playable all year round. So it's a great boost for us to have those facilities in the area.
That is some facility to have on your doorstep at the school, and indeed down across the road in Dr. Daly Park as well. I suppose everything comes together when you want success. You need these things to fall into place. Regardless of the reputation or the standing of the school, what do you know about Kieran's as a team and how they play and their strengths and maybe potential weaknesses? Do you know much about them, this particular side?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's a totally different style of hurling to the Munster hurling, to the Harty Cup hurling. It's very much, it's kind of more traditional. You won't find any sweepers down in Kilkenny. You go out and you compete. You compete in the air. They place a great value on winning ball in the air, and they have a couple of great ball winners. They have a blue chip forward in Harry Shine as well. So. That he would have been on the minor team of the year, the All Ireland team of the year last year. So we know we're going to have to keep an eye out for him. But they have a couple of other guys who really are well able to win their own ball. I suppose that'd be the hallmark of all Kilkenny teams. And their work rate, having seen them against Kilkenny CBS, is second to none as well.
Yeah, and I suppose you mentioned blue chip forwards, and you have dealt with a couple of blue chip forwards with other teams before in this run, and you do what you have to do, and your defence has been outstanding. And I suppose, as we all know, defence often does start with your full forward line, your forwards working their behinds off to make sure the pressure is on defenders clearing it. So we can expect a fairly traditional game, you think, up and down the field, plenty of aerial contests and all that. And how do you think that might suit your lads?
Yeah, well, I suppose we've had to roll with the punches. Every game we've gone out has been different, and every team that we've played has thrown different challenges our way. So, we're coming up against a different challenge, a completely different challenge now on Saturday. As I said, different to the Munster hurling. It's probably less tactical. It's more you win your own patch and you dominate first of all in the air, and they place a huge emphasis on winning primary possession, and their work rate, in fairness to them, is second to none. So
yeah, well, they wouldn't be Kilkenny.
That's what's facing us at the weekend.
They wouldn't be Kilkenny without an enormous work rate and belief too in that aspect of things. And but one of the hallmarks of your team, as I've noticed, and everybody would talk about, is the work rate. First of all, the honesty of effort, look, at the skills are there. There's no question about it, and I suppose you've seen that since they were in first year. But they've gelled together as a team, and I think the way they back each other up, and different fellas, come into the game at different times. But you have nothing to fear really in terms of your own ability. It's just a question about getting that performance out of them on the day, and that's something you don't really know until maybe when the ball is thrown in.
Yeah, 100%, Pat. I mean, I suppose the month layoff is a small bit of a worry, really, because
Yeah.
before that we would have been rolling every 2 weeks, and we would have been a tried and tested formula. So yeah, we know that if we don't bring the stuff that we brought to the other games, we're not going to be thereabouts in the final 5 or 10 minutes, and that's where we want to be. We feel that if we could be in with a shot with 5 or 10 minutes to go, then we'd have a reasonable chance. So that's where we want to be. We want to be competitive. We want to be there near the end, and we'll take our chances if we're in it near the end.
Exactly, and I mean that's your, as I said, your hallmark up to now. And look at, I think we'd all be happy enough to see you well in the game with 10 or 15 minutes left, because you have such magnificent record in strong finishing in recent times. Just to clarify for listeners, you had a reasonably good run in terms of no major injuries to key players or that kind of thing. There'll be always niggles, of course. So are you kind of happy enough that running into this semi-final that you're reasonably okay on the injury side of things?
Yeah, well, we have a couple of guys that are recovering from a lot of flu stuff, like chesty cough symptoms and things like that. Like lads trying to shake off different bits and pieces, and lads trying to work their way through a course of antibiotics. And McMahon from Crusheen is nursing a fairly swollen ankle. So yeah, we have one or two concerns. So it's just about trying to get those lads onto the field and trying to get them right. So yeah, we're hoping that we can piece them together and get them out onto the field and get them in as good a shape as they can possibly be.
I suppose it's never otherwise than preparing teams, Tomas, as we know. Look at, it's all to play for, and look at, we know you're good enough, and it's just a fantastic journey, and I'm sure the support, as usual, from East Clare and indeed many other parts of Clare as well, will only be massive yet again. And I suppose, Ronan O'Connor, I think, referred to it, he feels that really lifts the team. Now, I know sometimes teams lift supporters as well, and your team certainly does, but I think that support you have from all over Clare is a great boost to the players when the chips are down.
Yeah, but I suppose it probably works both ways with the crowd. Like in us, our guys have stuff that maybe a crowd can latch onto. We always say to the lads, like, win the crowd, and the crowd will drive you home. Like, so we're very lucky with the support that we have. All of East Clare, not only East Clare, but all throughout Clare.
Indeed. We've
got a massive back, and like the support we had today in the Gaelic grounds for the Harty Cup final was unbelievable. It was a carnival-like atmosphere, and they've been our 16 men all year. So yeah, we'd be appealing for as many people as possible from the area and from Clare to come down and help us get over the line on Saturday in Nina.
Exactly. The last word on it, I suppose, it's been a reasonably decent week. Weather-wise, pitches would be improving somewhat. Very little rain, only a few squibs. And Saturday, a good day promised as well. So look at every team going out. I'm sure Kieran's the same. Will like good conditions to play in, and your lads as well as anybody else want to play in the best conditions, regardless of who it suits best. They just want to play in good conditions, and that's I suppose a positive thing anyway in general.
Yeah, well, look, we've played in bad conditions and we've played in good conditions, and we'd like to think we're able to mix it in both. We like to think we're able to hurl. We like to think we're able to run, and we like to think that we're able to fight for the ball. So we have a lot of good qualities or characteristics, but it'll count for nothing if we don't bring those qualities out on Saturday.
That's the whole point. Tomas, I suppose the other semi-final, Good Counsel, Wexford versus Artskull Reach, has the makings of, I know, obviously, your own game is what concerns you, obviously 100%, you're not thinking ahead, but from the point of view of just a good match, this is the makings of a great game. We know Artskull Reach are very strong, they've recovered back and beat Attenroy there. And also Good Counsel, I think, have a lot of Kilkenny minor. So this is the makings of a really, really good contest. Would you have any inclination of how it might go from your own point of view?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's of no real concern of ours at the minute until we, unless we are actually in a final. But yeah, it does have the makings of a good contest. I suppose Good Counsel probably came by surprise to win the Leinster Championship. It was a huge victory for them. Obviously, they'd have a huge pedigree, and I know they're based in New Ross, but they have a lot of Kilkenny lads. They do have a big Kilkenny cohort in their panel, and I suppose Artskull Reach. We know the strength of Artskull Reach, and Our Scariff have rebounded very well. They were on course to beat Athenry, who would have been favourites of the competition in Ballyea the first day, but for the unfortunate injury to that right there.
Yeah.
And thankfully he recovered, and they were full value. They were full value for their win on Monday night in Dangan against Athenry. So yeah, it has the makings of a huge contest.
Absolutely, and as I said, it's not your concern at the moment, but it's just a great match to look forward to. If we can watch the stream and see, hopefully, which of them will be facing you in the final once you get there, which I've looked at, which we have every chance of. Just before we leave it, Tomas, there's a few clubmates of your own, I'm sure, up there in towards North. Well, I know you wouldn't. I don't know if you're currently live North Clare or not, but up in Ennistimon, and they're having a fantastic run between football and hurling, and isn't it absolutely wonderful? And to have great credit to Ennistimon as well as Tulla going so well. Great credit also to Ennistimon School up there.
Yeah, I suppose we're in my Ina Killamona hat. Like it's great to see. It's great. I suppose the school is probably backbone by Ina Killamona lads, and you have the Corfin lads and the Ennistimon lads, and what they've done is fantastic. To be able to win so comprehensively in a final, and to be able to compete in both the football and the hurling is a huge credit to them, and I don't see their journey in either competition stopping anytime soon. So yeah, I think they're out on the weekend against a team from Belfast. So
that's right. Yeah,
I would know an awful lot of the lads, and yeah, wishing those boys the best of luck, and hopefully that they could go one step further in helping to bring an All-Ireland title to North Clare.
Absolutely, with your club base involved, that's why I said it was worth the mention. And anyway, from a point of view of Clare School doing so well is fantastic, and we wish them very, very well. And I suppose Tara Rinn as well is vying for you with the manager of the year up there now for the springtime of the year. So fair play to Tara as well. Yeah,
it's a fantastic. Tara's been involved in both teams, so it's a huge achievement to be able to win a Munster title in hurling and football, and to be able to compete so strongly at our Ireland level. So I don't think that they'll be happy until they have those two All-Ireland Cups going back to Ennistimon.
And best of luck to Tulla as well from all here in Sportsline. And Tomas, I know you'll get sick of talking, I know you want to get out on the field for the action, so listen, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us in Sportsline. We'll be fully behind you, and the honour you're bringing to your school, the clubs in East Clare in general, and Clare hurling is fantastic, and we just hope it continues for another step. So the very, very best of luck this weekend against St. Kieran's, and again, we're all behind you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Pat. Thank you for the call.
On the wines with Tulla, where the Claremen place their day, for solemn used and sentinel above a hurler's head, and from the broken Northlands through Burden, bleak and bare.
And now we're delighted to be joined on the line by one of Clare's leading journalists with the Clare Echo, of course, Paraic McMahon. Paraic, thanks once again for helping us out on Sportsline. You're more than welcome to be here.
Thanks very much, Pat. Thanks for having me.
Busy times, Paraic. They all seem to be busy times lately, whether we're talking about condensed leagues or championships. There's so much happening. And I suppose we'll start with the National Hurling League and Clare's division. That elusive win, as probably expected, was achieved against Offaly. Didn't look like it was sure for, I suppose, 4/5 of the game, but finally things worked out as expected, Paraic.
Yeah, no, a great win to get over the line. I think only 1 point between them in the last 10 minutes, but Clare, as expected, then kind of pulled away to record a 420 16-point win. And the biggest plus of all, I think, is to see Mr. Tony Kelly back in the Clare colours, and further boosted by Peter Duggan making an appearance. So, mightn't seem too significant to some people, but just for Clare to end that winless streak is very important, and that was something Brian Lohan would have even emphasised at the final whistle. So they're off the mark now, and two very tough games to come with Limerick and Galway. So, in a way, it's fantastic preparation for championship that they're finishing against these two teams. Unlikely, well, we still could, depending on results, get out of the group, but you'd imagine Offaly are going to be the team that will finish bottom. So mixed enough campaign, but we could finish. If we could finish, you'd hope to get a win in either the Galway or the Limerick game. Particularly the Limerick, I think, from the psychological point of view, in that we're going to be welcoming Limerick back to Cusack Park for the championship, and they've already beat us in the Munster Hurling League in Cusack Park. So I think that one is going to be a very big game, even just psychologically, regardless of the outcome for it.
I think you're right, and I suppose any Clare Limerick game is a big game, but maybe in these circumstances it's even maybe that'll be slightly more important for Clare. Just going back and looking back to Offaly before we go into the Limerick one, I suppose it was a story of two sides of the spectrum: the brilliance of Tony Kelly being back, and the fantastic news that Peter Duggan has finally appeared as well, after having been willy won't he in Australia and all that sort of thing at one end of the spectrum maybe. And then the likes of Patrick Crotty and Shane Meehan, maybe two lads at the very, very dawn of their careers for Clare hurling, both doing exceptionally well, to get Clare over the line and get some fantastic scores with them.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the big plus of Brian's tenure so far, has been the couple of young lads that he's brought through, like Patrick Crotty, maybe not overly discussed as much, I suppose, outside of the Scariff and the East Clare community, whereas now he's making his mark. He had a great club championship last year, and his name is known with all Clare hurling followers now at this stage. And Shane Meehan, there was a lot of hype. There was even worry, would he go in with the footballers, or but he's fantastic feet, and he just weaves in. And as has been pointed out by Brian Lohan after the Offaly game, he takes a lot of punishment, but he gets on with it. He's great attitude, and he's a danger, and he's a threat every time. And he's going remarkably well as Patrick Crotty. I think Paddy Donlan is quite the industrious player as well around the middle of the field, and he's getting through an amount of work. It's very similar to Jack Brown, I think, in respects, but like he finished the Wexford game with 3 or 4 points all from play, so he's offering a lot. Paddy Donlan, again, his second year on the panel, so the likes of him, Shane Meehan, that first year under Brian, while they mightn't have got as much game time, only cameos in the league, training in with the guys and being a part of the panel for the year, it seems to be really standing to him. And as well, you've the likes of Robin Mounsey, who has had a good intermediate campaign with Rouen, played well in the 21s for Curfin Rouen, and he's making the step up. He's doing okay in the bit of game time he's getting. Maybe he mightn't be getting as long as he might possibly like, but seems to be doing okay. Doesn't seem to be a million miles off the pace. And then, of course, you've Mike Goff, showing well. He seems to be putting in that he's a potential option to be in the full back line now. And I'd love to see, maybe for either the Limerick or Galway game, Keane Nolan get a crack and see how he'll fare at senior intercounty level.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, Keane Nolan, I think we're all maybe talking, certainly East Clare out here anyway, and I know you were a fan as well of his club form, and that for some reason, since he's got on the panel, he just has got so little time now. I know injury has crept into it, and that is nobody's fault. It's just one of those things, but certainly one lad we'd love to see getting, and I suppose he needs to be tried out against one of the more top sides, because see can he cope at that level, as you've said. Now, the other thing that was notable as well, as we're talking about the Clare defences, so the other main talking point is that John Conlon has made a return to the half-back line, I suppose, the centre-back or kind of sweeper centre-back or whatever, or whatever you call the American position, quarterback, centre-back, whatever you want to call it. But, I think it now looks that the back line is getting very, very settled. People were worried about it, and we weren't finding too many new names, but it looks like he's settling fairly well for the 6 that maybe were there last Sunday, Paraic. And what's your opinion of the John Conlon experiment? I know it's not an experiment anymore, but for the future.
Yeah, I know you're saying settled, but in a way, I don't. It's maybe settled in their minds, but to say it's settled for us, I don't think so. I much prefer to see John in the forwards. That's my own personal opinion, but the argument from management is they feel he's calm on the ball, he's good at breaking it out and finding a person, and that the nearly the feeling then from talking to people within the camp is that they have enough options up front anyway.
Yeah.
With the likes of Peter coming back in, fingers crossed, toes crossed, and everything, that Mark Rogers will be back soon enough. Because he's
Shanahan returned to form. Seemed to return to form as well, which was the help. Yeah.
He put it, which, and again, that could come down to good management, and that he kind of maybe got a kick. He might have thought his place was nailed down, and then didn't play well in the Munster Hurling League and was put aside. But again, the similar thing which we would have spoke about the last days, like we are coughing up a lot of frees still in defence, and the management had to take off Conor Cleary for Mike Goff because he was close to being sent off on a second yellow. And we've been fortunate not to get punished with that, but I think we are going to get punished big time, and we are going to end up with 14 men in a big important game, and we know how important these Munster Championship games are going to be. So they seem to be. I think they seem to have fixed who they have in their heads that they'd like to go with. But like, just to go back to the start of the question about Keane Nolan, of course he had the injuries at the start, but I just love to see him get his chance. And similar to, again, going back to when we were talking the last time that it was kind of discussed, Aaron Fitz had a great game and that he'd get another chance. Keane is going to need more than one chance, because he's going to come in and he'll find his feet. But I wouldn't even rule him out full back. Just to try him and see how he's gone, because he's done very well there with Smith O'Brien's, and I know it's a massive jump from intermediate championship to senior into county, but it'd just be great to see him get a chance and see what level he is at when it comes to senior into county.
Yeah, and that's what I've said all along, Paraic. From I'm a lot older than you. I can remember back to Clare teams in the 70s and 80s and that, and all the way through to the great 90s squad and maybe to early 2000s. The big thing was we always had a settled defence, and the problem was we hadn't enough scoring forwards, and it seems to have come around the other way now, isn't it, really? Which is brilliant in a way, that we have seemed to have a good number of options up front, and its defence is maybe our slightly more weaker side of things.
Absolutely, and it's anything. I think any opposing inter-county manager, they'd be worried about a Clare attack. And even when they kind of see John push back, that might give them some bit of relief. But, to be trying to plan for an attack that could potentially include the likes of Peter Duggan, Tony Kelly, Shane Meehan, Mark Rogers, Ian Galvin, Cathal Malone. Like, there's so many different dimensions that those guys will throw. Even Patrick Crotty to come into a mix, because some guys have described him as an awkward hurler and maybe difficult to mark, but he's very effective. And then, you're just looking at it. I was listening to Colin Ryan was speaking on with Shane Stapleton during the week, and he was just saying a similar point to yourself, Pat, but he was kind of saying we seem to be fit, we seem to be okay. He was relatively happy with Rory Hayes, Diarmuid Ryan, and possibly John at 6. But then he said the other 3, it's not as secure.
Yeah, especially that number 7. That number 7 jersey is the big mystery, isn't it? At least Paul Flanagan seems to have somewhat settled into that other corner, and he can do an adequate job and sometimes a very good job. But that left half back position, nobody seems to be at all putting their hands up for it.
Yeah, and even said, like, someone could be listening and say, gee, he's giving out and he's very critical about the backs, because, while I'd be nervy about some of them, you couldn't really say Conor Cleary or Paul Flanagan was overly at fault in last year's championship either.
No, that's true.
But it's just, it's just a worry. Like, you look at, we have a quality forward line, and a lot of other counties do. When you see the damage the likes of, the Shane Kingstons and even Shane Barish did last year, when we played Cork, and, that was the game we lost. So that's the game you maybe introspect a bit more. But, you look at the club championship, then David Fitzgerald there was a lot of lads from Riley Kilmore that were outstanding. He was ultra consistent throughout the campaign. And if we could get him, he would tick that box in the 7. Jack Brown, again, had an excellent club campaign with Ballyea. He really stood up and proved a point. I think he was very motivated to prove a point to the county management. So it's hard to know what way you do it. Some other people are arguing, do you bring back Cathal Malone similar to when he was in the backs under Donal and Jerry? But I'd prefer to maybe keep him at 10 or even around midfield, because his level of work rate is unmatched.
Absolutely. Cathal Malone has been one of the players of our top players for the last 2 or 3 years, and maybe a lot of people wouldn't have foreseen that coming initially, but he has just worked hard and got himself into being one of our first names on the team list. In general, Paraic, I suppose we'll just talk about the league in general for a second, because it's a fascinating league in many ways, because you have teams like Dublin, Waterford and Wexford maybe, who would be a little bit unsung. Well, not Waterford I suppose as such, but flying it. And do you think that's just maybe winter form that won't be carried through, or do you think there's anything significant in the likes of Wexford and particularly Dublin as well going so well? I think Waterford isn't a surprise.
Yeah, Dublin is the hard one to judge. If they can bring that through to championship, they'd be the one I'd be slightly wary of banking on them. Yeah. Whereas I think Derry Egan's doing a fantastic job with Wexford. And like, I first came across him, and I probably might have been the same time as yourself, Pat, the year he was with Scariff.
That's right.
I think it was 2018, 2019 thereabouts. And obviously Scariff have been, and they've been a great club for years, but that was the year when I was watching them. I seemed to nearly be at every intermediate match for Scariff that year, and that's when I kind of realised the intermediate games are nearly better than the senior.
Yeah,
but it was at that stage watching them, I'd have said this Scariff team is good enough to be making the quarterfinals of the Clare Senior Championship. and he had done a fantastic job with him. And you could see they were very well drilled. So I've never trained under him, but I would have high regard for him from what I've seen the teams he's produced, and he seems to even be getting another kick off Wexford. Like people would always say, there's always an initial bounce off David Fitzgerald, but there's a big bounce down in Wexford off Derry Egan, and it's kind of the likes of Conor McDonald wasn't playing the last day, but he had started the league very well, and Derry seemed to be getting the best out of the likes of him. And Lee Chin hasn't played much or anything, right, so it's
still to come back. Yeah,
be happy with Wexford, but. You're looking then at the other Munster teams, Waterford flying it, top of the 1B with Dublin, and then Cork really laid down a marker at the weekend with their win over Limerick. People are kind of saying, just talking that are Limerick taking the league serious, but I don't think any team goes out to disregard a league, because it's very dangerous. I unfortunately have an experience of it with teams. Even if you get used to losing games, it's very demoralising for players. And you can't underestimate the actual significance of that. So I don't think Limerick are disregarding the league, but I think they'll come all guns blazing for ourselves in Cusack Park. But Henry Shefflin then starting well in Galway, in patches. That win over Limerick was big for them. Hard to judge then Cullen Bonner and Tipperary. I think people are saying, is it Clare and Tip? Would you write them off for Munster? I wouldn't, but I think I'd fancy your chances against Tipperary, and then it all comes down to on the day with the others, I'd say.
Yeah, Colm is the one who probably hasn't got a bounce. Maybe Tip haven't got a bounce of the new manager. You don't seem to sense any sense of excitement with the crowd, or maybe anything magic happening for Tip yet. No, that's not to write them off, of course. It'd be the most stupid thing to do, but as you say, hasn't happened for them yet. But look, I suppose the old adage of the league and championship in two different things will be tested out again this spring and early summer indeed. And just go back to the Clare Limerick game this weekend, Paraic. I suppose, as you said at the outset, it would be very, very important for Clare to try and get a win here, or else against Galway. Limerick aren't at their best at the moment. They're not going to turn around in a week fully. Referees seem to be pulling them a little bit more for the fouling. Again, that might be a spring thing or a wee league thing rather than summer. But it's a real chance for Clare, and I suppose if we don't at least perform well against them, the signs wouldn't be great for the summer.
No, and just one of your observations there, I think, is absolutely on the money about the referees in Limerick. To be honest, they actually remind me a bit of Clare in 2014, where Clare were maybe getting pulled, especially down in Wexford Park. There just seemed to be a bit more introspection on Clare, and even in Cusack Park, sure, you had Podge Collins getting sent off for that infringement, and no one has been sent off for that since, as far as I know. Yeah. But that just seems to be very much a parallel. And then you go back, it is huge significance for this game, and you're kind of questioning, does Brian go all out, or does he, maybe throw in someone like Darrell Owen or Mikey Goff or Akeem Nolan or someone like that, just to see what they do in the pressure cooker kind of game, because I'd say they'd have to nearly treat this as championship, and then even a Robin Mounsey or a Patrick Crotty, one of those guys, and see what they bring to it. But it'll be very interesting to see what sort of a team lineup he's gone with. Aver in every game. I think he's going to keep with him, and not with Eamon Foodie or Keane Broderick, which is probably fair enough. But maybe the two boys might say they'd love a crack, which they probably would. But I would be very interested if maybe he threw in what you could regard as a fringe player, and how they'd get on in what will be a big game against Limerick.
Yeah, and I mean, there's going to be a great atmosphere in Cusack Park, and as there's a real test against multi-All-Ireland champions, and it would be a place where you try at least one, if not two, maybe, as you said, those French players, and maybe Brian will, or maybe he'll just try to build up confidence by getting a win with the tried and trusted players. Look, it's fascinating anyway, and an awful lot to look forward to in that game. Now, Paraic, you're also sticking with hurling for the moment. There's another major fixture, of course, this weekend. Today, this very day, Tulla against St. Kieran's. St. Kieran's was the aristocrats of college hurling, certainly in Leinster and indeed at Ireland level as well. And brilliant Tulla, having won a Harty Cup there for the first time in their history, won't be fearful of any reputation, but still a major challenge for them.
Major challenge, but my God, I wouldn't want any other team to go in to be going into challenge than this Tulla panel. They're remarkable. And you'd just love, maybe the romantic or the fairy tale side of it. You'd love for them to get a day out in Croke Park. I think it's the least they deserve, and if they were to get over St. Kieran's, obviously that's the reward. Like, but they'll have their homework done. Like, as I remember, even listening and to Terence talking even before and after, they hadn't seen much of Artskull Reach at the time of their semi-final, but they did their homework and they completely nullified the key threats. The one thing that possibly could catch Tulla, which it would be hard to begrudge them, is just the celebrations seem to go on for maybe a bit of a festival. They did a tour of East Clare, so which had to be done as well, that they marked the occasion and make the memories. But it'll be very interesting. It'll be big chance, and it's great for St. Joseph Tulla. You would have sympathy for the Flannans team that maybe didn't get a chance to conclude their All-Ireland campaign, because you'd been hoping a Croke Cup could have come back. But these are the guys. They'll seize the challenge, and they'll definitely be up for it. Nina will suit them, and
weather conditions have been good this week as well, Paraic, which is probably it'll suit both sides obviously. But there's no team going out doesn't want to play in decent conditions.
Absolutely, and I definitely will. It'll suit. I remember I was kind of maybe talking about Oisin Clune the last. I think the conditions will kind of suit a player like him, who maybe hasn't been overly influential. Whereas the mucky conditions, it could maybe suit a different type of hurler. Yeah. So I think it's you possibly could say St. Kieran's might have a stronger panel, because St. Joseph's have maybe got away without having an extraordinary impact off their bench. But just one of the things I've been completely struck, and you did a fantastic interview with Ronan O'Connor after, just the leadership of players like him, their maturity beyond their years, and they're exemplary. They're a credit to their school.
We were all highly impressed with Ronan, I have to say. Yeah, a young fella who's had tough times in his personal and family life there in recent times, and yet just never once showed any signs of any emotion or anything else. Only just very realistic about the importance of the group, and keeping their heads on the ground. Yeah, really impressive young man.
Yeah, and like we sometimes you'd be listening to people and they throw out platitudes easy every now and then, and just because they get thrown around, do they add significance? But that Ronan O'Connor, I must say, is an inspirational young guy. I've been really struck by him. Just watching different interviews that he's done afterwards, I think he's a very impressive young guy, and delighted to see that he was captain. You'd actually be emotional even watching it, and even I listened back to Tommy Gilfoyle give a wonderful tribute to him on Clare FM as well.
Absolutely.
That's the beauty of the Harty Cup, that you have these areas coming together, and lads that should be, as I think Rowan would have said, that they'd be tearing the head off each other, and they're going to war with each other. So maybe it's the romantic in us, but I'd love to see them get to Croke Park and keep going. But some challenge in the way this weekend.
A fairy tale it would be indeed. The other, I suppose, positive thing is to see a good through Clare lads leading Artskull Reach on their way to the semi-final as well, and especially at the scoring end of things. And while we were in deep depression last year, maybe at the underage set up in Clare, and I know this couple of school runs don't change things magically, but to see Clare fellas leading the scoring rate for Artskull Reach is also very positive, Paraic.
Yeah, Broadford's Niall O'Farrell is going very well, and there's a sizable Clare contingent inside there as well.
David Kennedy as well, I think. Yeah,
going well. Yeah, there's and a couple of guys on the extended panel as well. But like it yourself, Passion, and from the education side of things, these kind of runs, what Terence and Aidan and Tomas have done, this Harty team didn't happen overnight. Like, this is 5 years in the making that they've put this squad together and built it. And like, while we're happy to see the Clare lads lighting out with Artskull, I think the run they've gone on, and the run of Flannans, the Clare guys that are maybe considering going to Artskull, they'll go to Tulla and they'll go to Flannans as well.
Very important point, actually. Yeah.
And we have benefited from Artskull Reach with the likes of Cathal McInerney and Conor Ryan and Cratlow, but I just think it'd be better for us. Maybe I'm being very clannish or whatever, but
parochial will say, but nothing wrong with that either.
If we had our Clare schools getting there, because I think as well, the one thing that was standing out for me about this Tulla team is I think these guys, and even Niall Moran kind of mentioned in the dressing room, these guys will be the backbone of their clubs, because if you look at the St. Caimin's team in 2009 that got to their Harty Cup final, you would have had the guys that have been key members of their club, the Cratlow lads like Enda Boyce and Podge Collins, all these guys that have stayed on and actually been driving their club and leading their clubs for years. So hopefully the same thing will be replicated with the guys in the Mills and Tulla and all these surrounding clubs.
I think it's a very, very important point you make there, Paul, from that point of view of Clare hurling. Yes, better keep the old Clare teams, school teams, getting the All-Irelands and that, or Skull win an odd one if they want a couple of Limerick lads on their team now and again. But look, yeah, you're right. We need the Clare clubs and Clare schools striving and I suppose, feeding each other with players, the top class players. Now, we'll change course for a second and we'll just talk about Camogie, because I know you're very familiar with the Clare Camogie scene and very interested as well. And I suppose last weekend against Kilkenny there seemed to be a very, very improved performance, a 1-point defeat, and I think it was a late point at that. And I suppose the new management team finding their feet, trying out as many girls as they can, and missing some players as well. But overall, your impressions of last Sunday's display against Kilkenny, Paraic?
Yeah, I know they were very disappointed not to get the win, and I wouldn't be one for moral victories at all. But I think, considering the Clare team that was out in the panel of players, I actually thought it was a good result to lose to Kilkenny by a point. Now, Kilkenny would tell you, and Brian Dowling, their manager, said that they were very disappointed with their display as well. Kilkenny weren't that 100% themselves, but this very much seems to be a Clare team in transition. You saw the two Dailies coming in off the bench straight away, and John Carmody acknowledged afterwards that it wasn't ideal to have to be calling on them, but that seems to be the way they are with injuries, and they'd overlap with the juniors, because it is very unfair. And the girls, they were, they hadn't even 7 days, or they at most had 7 days since Scariff one of those runs. So I just, we talk about player welfare, but it doesn't seem to be delivered here at all in this respect, because again, if I was with Scariff Gunlow, I'd be shouting from the rooftops, because you don't want those girls to be tired when it comes to the Crunchy Club Championship, whereas they're just gone from one hamster wheel to another straight away with no break. So it's a lot to ask of them, I think. And again, it is, as I say, very much a Clare team in transition. From the likes of yourself and Leo, have been at the games for years, and I've been at the games for years, and there's a lot of them going in there you wouldn't recognise a lot of the panel. It's which is interesting, but also slightly worrying, because it's the old chestnut that I've been harping on any time I kind of talk Camogie on this show, is we're struggling to keep the best players in Clare playing Camogie on the county panel, which is, I don't know what it is. Maybe there's a PhD in it.
I understand. Yeah, you're right.
But, it's just very worrying, because I just think the mix was off, and I know they're managing the juniors and the seniors together, but and not to be disrespectful to anyone, but there was a couple of junior Camogie players on the team really for Clare, and that's going to catch them.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can see the standard is there, but one player that I thought I was very impressed with was Caoimhe Carmody from Kilmaley.
I believe she played very well. Yeah.
She was our top scorer from play, I think, and she had an excellent club campaign in 2020 for Kilmaley. They got to semi-final, and she didn't really get any game time for under Ger O'Connell last year, which I thought was both surprising and disappointing, because you want to be trying to bring through a young player. But she really stepped up. She stepped up last week, very similar to how Zian Bilan played in that game against Galway away last year. She just took. She
was outstanding, particularly that first half. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, that's right.
And Zian then was wing forward, so. I suppose it'd nearly be too similar to play the two of them midfield together, but to have players with that level of work rate,
engines,
very happy with.
Yeah, athletic girls,
they'd stay going. So it's and then again, it's there's some parallels between the hurling team and the Camogie. That Chloe Morey was at centre back, whereas I would have felt that was tried maybe 10 years ago and it didn't work. So I don't think it's probably the best thing now, but they have Claire Heher at fullback, probably to have the bit of security, whereas Claire would be well able to line out at 6. I think Aoife Keane, again, probably one of the more effective forwards on the team that's capable of scoring from play. She's back wing back as well. So on paper, I suppose they do have a strong half back line of Aoife Keane, Chloe Morey, Lana Ryan, but two of those three you'd prefer to see in the forward line. And it's Darren Murphy, I suppose I must mention her as well. She pulled off one fantastic save, and she saved a penalty as well. But
she's been very impressive the few times I've seen her. Absolutely very impressive for a girl who hadn't been playing in goals for a club as far as I know ever, or much anyway. Up in the forwards with
she's very, very competent at the weekend in Cusack Park as well. But just on the penalties, they've conceded 3 penalties in 2 games as far as I know, which is maybe another
concern.
trend that's replicating from the hurlers, but it's something that they need to rectify. But again, it just seems to be, whether it's 2022 or 2010 or 2015, it's the same old problem with Clare Camogie, in that we're just seem to be possibly relying on our frees for scores. Like Lorna McNamara, I know she would have only got 3 frees from her 8-point or 10-point tally, sorry, but like we don't seem to be threatening enough up front, or that there's a player, again, and not to be comparison the whole time with the hurling, but like a Shane Meehan, whereas if he gets the ball, you're panicking straight away, whereas it's nearly, if Emer Kelly gets the ball, we know what she's going to do, whereas there's no bit of spontaneity, I suppose, from our forwards, just to keep, and you even see it at the intercounty level in the Camogie now. They'll have their level of research done, like any good management team. So I think it's probably fairly easy to set up to maybe eliminate the clear threat up front, and if you're not scoring, you're probably not going to win the game.
And I suppose the biggest aim, I suppose, if I was involved in Clare management, I'd be trying to say, okay, we're not going to immediately catch up with maybe Galway, Cork and Kilkenny even to be beating them, but could be the best of the rest. And I think that's the aim they should be going for. Okay, Tipper probably looking at being hitting into that top table little circle, but I suppose, like, you have your Waterfords and you have your Limericks and your maybe Dublins and Wexfords and a few more coming there. And if Clare could take the step of being the next better, winning the games against those that they do have, but of course obviously you have to play the top teams in between, you mightn't get too far, but it's to be the aim, I suppose, because with the senior championship we have, and indeed the intermediate, I think, as you said at the outset, there should be enough players of a certain standard there to bring us to the top 4, and I suppose that's the challenge for the lads in charge and ladies indeed. And I suppose they need time, but sadly enough in sport often you don't have enough time, do you? There's a certain amount of time you get, and you have to either then do it or kind of admit it's not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, the club, like when you see Scariff getting to an All-Ireland semi-final, why can't we replicate that level of dominance? And even you saw in Lamona getting to a Munster final. Generally, when we're progressing, our clubs are progressing out.
Yeah, true. So now top class well as well. In the province.
Exactly. So it's why we're not replicating that is an interesting one as well. But the most, and again, following Camogie for decades in Clare, the most disappointing thing, I have no problem losing games or whatever, but it just seems to be that even Limerick bypassed us, and that was very apparent in Father McNamara Park.
Absolutely.
In the championship, that they just completely were all over us. And I was just very despondent going out to Father Mac Park that day, because it just didn't align with everything. We shouldn't, fair play to Limerick that they have put in great work, but like, it just kind of said, what are we doing? We just need to be almost standing still. And as Colin Collins has said, if you're standing still, you're going backwards.
And I suppose one of the finest players we have, and indeed maybe in the country, Niamh O'Dea. Now that Chloe seems to have been settled in the 6th shirt by management, where would you see a role for Niamh if she was, hopefully she'll be back soon, Paraic, because she's a player who could really spark for Clare.
She could. I'd like ideally there now, if I was to do it, I'd maybe put Niamh to 11 and you could throw Emer Kelly to 14, and straight away
that could change things
you
a lot.
Maybe have a bit of lightning, that kind of keeps the opposition guessing. But there just seems to be, like, obviously Niamh has a high level of games between the dual commitments, and I don't know if it's a correlation as part of that, but there's just a high level of injuries that she's never maybe been there for full championship for either team. She's just getting unlucky with injuries now at this stage. Whereas I remember her when she was bursting into the scene at 14, 16, and she's probably one of the greatest footballers I had seen at the time. And she's kind of maintained that level of football as their number one, which is fair enough, but the Camogie has kind of been in and out to an extent. She adds something every time she's there, but maybe part of that is she hasn't been given a settled position. Every time a new management comes in, she's put here or put there. And am I
correct? She was made captain. I think she's captain. Is she of the squad of the team?
She's joint captain.
And that's right. So I'm wondering, was management thinking there would be a way of getting her to, as not commit, I suppose, because she's a very committed player, but to maybe, I suppose, give massive attention to the Camogie this year. Hopefully, there's a long way to go yet. Anyway. that she will be
and
able
even
to.
John Carmody would have had experience of managing her at club level with Camogie, and also he was over the Clare minors before he took the seniors and won a senior Munster champion with them back around 2012. But I would say that team that he had in 2012, you had the likes of Deirdre Murphy, you had some excellent names and fantastic servants. Clare Camogie, not taking away the commitment the girls are given today is probably more, but I'd just be worried. Even I haven't gone through the age demographic, but they are very young, and it'll just be interesting to see if we play back this interview in 5 years, how many of that panel is actually still there of the younger girls as well, particularly because there's leaving cert students I think on the panel as subs, and there's just a lot between them pulling from the juniors and stuff. And even I think it was probably because of that the two dailies had to come on, because they didn't want to be using girls that were on the junior panel, because they had a match at, I think one was at 1 o'clock and the other was at 3 o'clock. So it's that's maybe one of the downfalls of having the two managements, the same management over the two teams.
Yeah. Well, Paraic, here we are in the first week of March, and there's plenty of questions with regards to Clare Camogie and indeed Clare hurling, and particularly at senior level. And look at some questions will be answered this week, no doubt, and I'm sure more questions will be answered in the weeks to come. But regardless of that, anyway, as usual, we offer you our sincere thanks for your magnificent analysis and your real great insights into both sports for us here on Scariff Bay, and we're very, very delighted that you joined us on Sportsline once again. So Garamil Mahagut Patrick once more.
Thanks very much, Pat. Always a pleasure.
Great. So that's our Sportsline for this week on 88.3 FM and 92.7 FM. And brought to you, of course, in association with Dare Credit Union. And my thanks to Jim for engineering and doing sound and all the other parts of the production. Also special thanks to Tomas Kelly from Tulla's post-primary school, and to Paraic McMahon from the Clare Echo. So this is Pat McMahon saying best of luck to the Clare teams this weekend, and until we meet again, Slán agus Beannacht.